Okay, so now we're talking about the adrenal glands. All right, so the adrenal glands are these little glands that are located on top of your kidneys. So if your kidneys are these little bean-shaped things there, your adrenals sit on top. And they look like this over here. So there's two parts of the adrenal gland. The cortex, which is glandular tissue, and the medulla, which is neural. So the medulla is in the middle. It's this little core part of the adrenal gland. This other part, this entire other part, is the cortex. And the cortex is divided into 3 layers. So the first layer on the outside, which we're going to color blue here, is called the zona glomerulosa. Zona glomerulosa. The middle layer, this layer here, is called the zona fasciculata. Fasciculata. And the innermost one here is called the zona reticularis. And each one of those layers has a different function. Each one of those layers secretes a different type of hormone. So if we look at, take a chunk of it and look at the layers, starting with the medulla, be that. So let's see. So we'll have the medulla here. And next we'll have that's zona reticularis. Green is fasciculata, and blue is glomerulosa. Okay, so the medulla is the part that is associated with the autonomic nervous system, or the sympathetic part of the nervous system. So the sympathetic activation comes from basically a neuron. So a neuron, a preganglionic neuron, is going to, you got a neuron here. That preganglionic neuron is going to innervate the medulla and have the medulla, or stimulate the medulla to dump epinephrine and norepinephrine into the bloodstream, but it is caused by a neuron. So this is for sympathetic activation. Okay, and its hormone, which is a neurohormone, is going to be epinephrine and norepinephrine. And this provides our sympathetic response, our fight and flight. Fight and flight response. Okay, so we know this. We looked at the ANS. That's what that is. So the cortex part, which is the glomerulosa, the fasciculata, and the reticularis, do some different things. So the cortex colors here. So the cortex is stimulated by ACTH. ACTH comes from the pituitary, and it is stimulated by CRH. So the hypothalamus secretes CRH, which is the releasing hormone, to the anterior pituitary, which will cause the release of ACTH. That will target the cortex. So the cortex, the main, so what the cortex does is it secretes different types of hormones depending on the layer. So in the zona reticularis, sex hormones are made and secreted. So we call these androgens, and it's going to include testosterone, DHEA, estrogens, stuff like that. I'm going to go ahead and put estrogens. So these are called gonadocorticoids. Gonadocorticoids. So these are steroid hormones. They target most cells for like growth, bone and muscle strength. So just put bone, muscle, let's say strength. So it targets the bone and the muscles. It has an effect on sex drive. And it has a sort of a component of, adding to things like aggression, like competitiveness, things like that. So these are, again, sex hormones, also called androgens, and they are important for these things. They also supply like estrogens to males. So males don't need a lot of estrogen, but they do need a little bit. So it supplies that. It helps to supply estrogen to females once their ovaries go into retirement. It also increases like hair growth, body hair growth, things like that. All right. The next layer is the zona fasciculata. And the zona fasciculata makes glucocorticoids. Corticoids. And cortisol being the main one. So cortisol is your stress hormone. It also targets most cells. All right. The last layer is the glomerulosa. I'm just going to put this on this side. So the zona glomerulosa makes mineral corticoids. And mineral corticoids meaning aldosterone. So aldosterone targets the kidney. And what it does is it increases the absorption of sodium, or reabsorption. It increases blood pressure. It increases blood volume. Yep. And that's what that does. Very similar, if you remember, to ADH. So those work closely together to regulate blood volume and blood pressure and all of that. All right, so make sure you go through each of these layers. Make sure you know what each of these layers is called and what it secretes and basically what it targets. All right, and understand that CRH from the hypothalamus is the releasing hormone that goes down to the anterior pituitary, which will secrete ACTH, which will target the cortex of the adrenal gland. So increased levels of these hormones will feed back to the anterior pituitary to decrease ACTH and back to the hypothalamus to decrease CRH.